In the early 20th century, there were several haunted trains that roamed the world. These were eerie vehicles driven by ghosts who seemed to be stuck in the twilight zone. Let me share with you the story of one such locomotive that was doomed to wander eternally. The day it disappeared. The year is 1911. The location is Italy. At the time, trans-European travel was all the rage among the wealthy elite. Trains were the way to go, especially if you wanted to arrive in style. On June 14th, a luxury train called the Zanetti left Rome and embarked on a journey to Milan. The train was filled with 106 passengers. There were businessmen, vacationers, and a number of socialites. Also on board were the famous opera singer Giovanni Zanetti and his wife Adele, after whom the train was named. Finally, there was the conductor and the train's engineer, both employed by the Rete Mediterranea Railway Company. After the train left Rome, it made stops in Florence, Pisa, and Genoa. In the evening, it arrived at its final stop before Milan, the town of Susa. At around 9 p.m., the train left Susa and entered the 8.7-mile-long Lombardy tunnel. This was not your usual tunnel. As soon as any vehicle entered, it would vanish from sight. Because of the darkness inside, travelers would light up their lamps and carriages would echo with voices and laughter until they reached the other end. However, this time, the sounds coming from the tunnel took a sinister turn. When the train had almost traversed 2/3 of the tunnel, the people outside heard screams, the clattering of wheels and a blast of air. Then everything went silent. The train did not appear on the other side, so the officials waited and even sent a search party into the tunnel. But they found nothing. There was no wreckage, no bodies, no sounds. It was as if the tunnel had swallowed the entire train and everyone in it, passengers, crew, baggage, luggage, food, everything. The only clue to what happened was an oil lamp lying on the ground near the entrance. To make matters worse, similar incidents had been reported in the past. The ghost train. After the Zanetti disappeared, there were strange reports from all over Europe. People spoke of seeing a phantom train moving from one city to another, always at night. Sometimes it appeared in Italian towns, sometimes in Ukrainian villages. And in 1991, a group of tourists in Mexico witnessed the spooky train passing through a mountain valley. But the most unsettling part was that it moved silently. Not a single sound did it make, despite supposedly having dozens of carriages and hundreds of passengers on board. There were also some survivors. According to various accounts, 2 women were able to jump from the train before it vanished. They were immediately taken to the nearest hospital because they were confused and terrified. They had no idea how they got there. When they recovered, the women gave the police a written statement about what happened on that fateful day. Both women said that when the train entered the tunnel, it began to shake violently. Then suddenly, the lamps flickered and went out. There was absolute darkness, one of the women wrote. I opened my eyes wide and could see nothing. We continued to travel for a while in the darkness. Then the shaking stopped and we saw a faint white fog inside the tunnel. We had never seen this before. One of the women said she couldn't take it anymore. She opened the carriage door and jumped out. Her companion did the same. They were both injured, but they were alive. The survivor claimed that she had clearly seen the carriages behind them lit up and the passengers waving frantically. Then the doors were closed and the train continued on. She and her companion were the only ones who had left. They then heard the whistle blow twice and then once again disappear from view. This detail about the whistle was corroborated by others who claimed to have seen the ghost train. Every witness said that the locomotive blew a shrill whistle before vanishing. Some say it's cursed. Back in 1911, the missing train made headlines all over the world. But after a few weeks, interest in the case died down. The case was eventually closed and the official investigation was shelved. The verdict was that the train must have derailed and plunged into the abyss inside the tunnel. but people living near the tracks didn't believe this. They said the soil above the tunnel hadn't shifted and there was no sign of a derailment. Even the two women who survived insisted that the train hadn't derailed. They had jumped out of it safely. That's why rumors started spreading that the train was cursed. People began telling stories about how the Zanetti was haunted by the ghosts of former passengers who died aboard the train or whose lives ended tragically. Perhaps they were trying to warn those on board about the danger ahead. Or perhaps they were taking revenge for their untimely deaths. One legend says that the train was carrying a secret shipment of gold coins from the Ottoman Empire and that a band of thieves hijacked it. Another legend says that a local dignitary who was supposed to ride the train that day decided to cancel his trip at the last minute. He was traveling with his son, and that boy was meant to inherit the family name. But now he will die without producing an heir. The legend goes that the son boarded the train anyway and was furious at his father for not accompanying him. So when the train reached the tunnel, the boy pushed the engineer, causing the accident. But in reality, it seems like just a bunch of superstitious nonsense. You see, tunnels were common knowledge in the early 20th century. People knew they existed. So it's highly unlikely that passengers would have boarded a train knowing that it would lead them into the belly of the earth. Time, rifts and wormholes. By the 1950s, the story of the missing train had become part of local lore. Villagers near the tunnel claimed that the train reappeared every few years and traveled through the town, leaving behind a smell of coal and smoke. The apparition would last only a few hours before vanishing again. Throughout this time, the authorities denied these claims. They didn't want another mass panic, so they kept quiet. It wasn't until 1991 that someone finally came forward with more details. This person was Francisco Jose, a resident of the small village of Sacrofano. According to him, he had seen the ghost train while walking home. He described the experience in a letter to the New York Times. He said the train looked very old and was pulled by an engine emitting thick black smoke. It was covered in ash and dust and had no headlights, no driver, no conductor. He said the carriages looked like old wood-burning stoves. It was dark, but the windows of the train were bright, giving off a green glow. Suddenly, the train stopped and he heard chains dragging metal wheels. The noise lasted about 10 minutes. Then everything fell silent again. He said the train was full of people, yet it didn't make a single sound. Then it sped up, became lighter, and disappeared, just like that. Some say the train traveled through a wormhole, others say it entered a time rift. A few say it's cursed, but no one has ever found the Zanetti train. And this is the scariest part. What if the train isn't lost? What if it's still out there wandering the earth? What if it's looking for its passengers? If you see an old Italian train, don't get close. Some passengers are still on board, and they can't leave. Thanks for watching. Bye.